This is Diablo 2 Resurrected. We're here on Xbox Series X taking a look at this absolutely classic game that has been brought back and really enhanced to such an insanely high degree. The visual fidelity difference between the original and the new version is just simply stunning, and it's so cool to see in action. So what we're getting on Xbox Series X are two options. Both have HDR support, and yeah, we're going to kind of be showing that off and talking about it. So right now we have the performance mode on, so I guess that's a dynamic resolution at 60 FPS. Apparently it's up to like 1440p, which is honestly a little bit low of a target in my opinion for what it should be hitting, but that's what they have set up, and it does actually make sure that the experience is, for what I played, quite fluid and well done in that regard. Then there is another option, and that is a native 4K resolution. It's dynamic, but it's mostly native 4K at 30 FPS, so you can do that. And you switch to quality mode, and we'll just show off a bit of this in action. Like, it does look quite significantly sharper, but honestly, losing that frame rate for me just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, I mean, it might be something you want to see, and it is the default mode too, so you actually have to go and manually adjust it if you do want to have, you know, that higher level of fluidity that I think is, you know, really quite an important element of the game. So we're going to turn back to having the high frame rate because to me that is the way to go. There's also the legacy video options, so you can do either 640 by 480 or you can do 800 by 600. So we're going to discard that and we're going to go back to the old version. So this is what we have now, and then we can go over to options and we can change it to the 640 by 480, and you can see how that's made like a bit of a zoom in on the experience just for like making it a little bit tighter. So, you know, that's really up to you between the two options if you want to do that. I also suggest turning on, you know, if you want, blended shadows, perspective mode. Kind of makes it feel really cool. The parallax scrolling effect, these are kind of fun things to play with. They're off by default, but you can turn them on. And then making sure lighting quality is high because, you know, the console can obviously handle it. And then also turning up the player count to 8 is a lot more fun if you'd like to do that. Character level difference, I guess you could change that, but anyways, we're not going to mess with that. So you get different skill trees, you get different inventory stuff in the game, you know, you've got like a range of different ways to kind of build up your classes. There's a bunch of different groupings that you can go through. There's 5 acts of battling that should take you at least, I don't know, I want to say 15 to 20 something hours, and then you can go back and you can play the whole game again on a higher difficulty, and that'll take even more time, and then go back another time, and you can get more loot, and then you can do this with all the different classes, and it's a game you can play almost endlessly, and to me that's kind of a little bit crazy. And I love switching back and forth between the new version and the old version, just seeing like the changes over time. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And yeah, you can play this in co-op. It's a little, like, it doesn't have cross-play support. It has cross-progression, but it doesn't have cross-play. And I found that to be a little bit annoying. Because, you know, having cross-play would have been great, and it was impossible, basically, to matchmake with others. I noticed it. It just seemed like we could not, you know, really come across others. I played it all in co-op, but, you know, it just felt really hard to actually play with other people or find other matches in matchmaking, and to me that was a little disappointing. I'm actually gonna die here, aren't I? I'm post and I'm leveled up, but not super leveled up. I just wanted to show off a different area. But yeah, it's just kind of like a little bit hard to actually get full player sizes going just with the matchmaking and whatnot. And that was just from my experience. It's just like it's hard to find people, but it's easy to set up matches with friends. I didn't really notice any like performance issues, any problems. Everything seemed to run relatively fine. I was very happy with the performance and the style and the look of the game. There were some odd stutters, which I believe were online focused, just in regards to like the server stutters, because they would be something that would impact me and the person I was playing with. So that's something to keep in mind. Other than that, you know, it actually seems to run fine, look good, and it is a generally exciting experience that you can spend a ton of time playing. Like, seriously, you could go over and over and over again playing this game and have an absolute riot of a time with it. I don't know, I find it to be interesting and definitely, you know, rather distinct. And I also noticed that, like, the loading is pretty fast, but it takes a little bit longer if you are kind of loading from the 5th act, I noticed, like, it seems like the other acts are a lot faster for their loading and whatnot. And the game's got a lot of complexity to it. There's a lot of different characters to meet, a wealth of a story, gorgeous cinematics that, you know, if you know Blizzard, that's one thing they absolutely nail, is the, you know, visuals, or not the, is the, like, well, the visuals of the cinematics are, like, stunning, really. And you get different gear, and you've got to, like, repair your gear, and you got to get different things, and you build up these classes over time, and then you got the skill trees, and you improve your characters, and there's lots of intense builds you can do online. I think if you're someone looking for that nostalgic revisit, this is the perfect experience for that, because you get to go back in time, enjoy what you loved, and it looks absolutely amazing now. If you're a newer player, I do find that it would be a little bit harder to kind of get into and approach, because I really wouldn't necessarily play this by myself. I feel like if you did single player in this, you'd have a really hard time with it, like difficulty-wise and stuff. Like, it's not hard, but just like the sheer quantity of enemies you have to deal with is insurmountable. It really is crazy, and there's like tons of dungeons and unique places. Like, I'm trying to show off as many of the different areas as I can in this game, because there are so many unique locations. Like, it is incredible, like the quantity of different spots you visit and the different dungeons. There's like side dungeons and side environments, and you know, it's kind of crazy. I should mention also it's got cross-gen multiplayer, so like, you know, last-gen Xbox players can play with you know, the next-gen players. So that's kind of a cool thing if that's something that, you know, kind of impacts your interest in this one. Oh, look at you dying there. But yeah, just like a range of different enemies to fight. Like, this game is seriously stacked with the quantity of enemies that you can fight across the game. Like, such a distinct variety across the different environments, the biomes, and the worlds. And then you get like these massive bosses you have to fight. You know, you've got like, there's like your big bad guy Diablo, and there's Baal, and there's Mephisto, and just intense enemies you have to battle, and different boss fights, and different scenarios to take on. It's really quite a riveting experience if you're coming in here for the first time, because I hadn't played Diablo 2 prior to playing it on the Series X here. You know, and it was actually quite a riveting experience, and I can see why they consider this to be one of the greatest games ever created. Like, just the amount of game time you get out of it, the amount of value, the different ways you can experience this game. It's incredible. It really is amazing. And I think for the most part, this is actually a solid, you know, port of the experience. Or I guess you can't call it a port, it's a remake, but, you know, it's a really good remake in terms of being something like, hey, you can appreciate where the game came from, and you can see where it is now. For me, I love that. I think that makes the perfect remake in regards to being something that you can see, you know, where it's come from, and immediately switch and see where we are now, just like the technology gaps. I find that fascinating. And I'd say for the most part, this is an incredible value package. Like I said, if you like the gameplay, you can play it over and over and over and over again, and that's just crazy. It really does feel endless. And it's got all of the content included, all of the gameplay, all of different classes. You know, the expansion is just like integrated into the story, and it feels like a natural extension of it. It's really, really cool, and it's such a worthwhile time. And you can have up to 8 players, and I was hoping to have 8 players. I was trying to matchmake, and again, it just seems hard to line up and end up with players. I guess maybe you got to do like a bigger gap spread of like how many players can play together. And it really is a lot different in co-op. You can work through things a lot faster as a team, and I think that's more interesting. Now, I do wish that they would have done something more with the waypoint system in the game. It can be really frustrating if you die and you have to like re-walk a far distance. That's why co-op was so helpful. And you gotta basically use these portals in order to, you know, kind of save your spot if you're about to die and something like that. And I feel like they could have either made the waypoints more easily accessible or findable, or they could have updated things. I mean, you know, it's cool to have the original version and style of it, but I do find that it is a bit of a pain to have to deal with the waypoint system in this game, and it just makes traveling really hard. Like, sometimes you'll die and you have to like walk for like 10 minutes or something, and that can be a real pain. Obviously in co-op, it wasn't really an issue for my friend and I, but Yeah, I'm just thinking back to like doing some solo stuff on this one and how much of a pain it was. It was really frustrating to have to deal with that. And I'm just kind of mentioning it for people that are, kind of looking at this solo-wise, that it actually can be quite hard to deal with yourself. And I know there's people that are going to be like, oh, it's just a breeze in the park, and, that's great for you as well. But I'm trying to think of all different players, because this is really, a lot of people, this is going to be their first, Diablo experience. They're going to be their first time playing Diablo 2, and, you could see how it would be kind of hard for some people to kind of like get into it after all these years. And I mean, there's tons of guides online for different classes and different scenarios and the different bosses, but at the same time I could see where it might not necessarily be fully accessible for people. And it doesn't hurt to modernize some mechanics of the game, in my opinion, while still retaining that original style. Should we go out here? We did such a bad job of getting all the different waypoints. Like, I gotta say that. We should have done way better at that, but it's just really, really neat. And you get tons of different cool armor sets, and I really like what I got with like my horns and stuff. But you find all these different things over time. You discover all of these different, secrets and hidden places, and the Arcane Sanctuary is nuts looking. I think like the visual and the art, the visual style and the art direction of this game is phenomenal. It really does look great, plays very well in that regard, and it just feels so cool, switching between these different styles and finding these enemies and enjoying the replay value of going through these, different regions over and over again. And like I said, I could come back here and I could do something different, like a necromancer. I could do like a sorceress. I could do like a barbarian. There's all these different, class options that you can enjoy and you can play and you can battle over and over and over again. And it's cool. And the map is going to be like slightly different each time you go at it, like the direction and stuff. And there's like the rediscovery, because obviously I've gone through this area, but it's acting like I've never been here, right? And I think that kind of keeps it a little bit more fresh as well, which I think is important. So you can play it alone, which I think is hard, and I don't necessarily suggest. You can play it in co-op, which I think is a lot of fun, and I definitely think is worthwhile because, it's cool to have a friend or two just to cut through the hordes of the undead with. I think that's really nice. Now, there is no split screen. I guess I maybe should have mentioned that even earlier, but you gotta play it online multiplayer, which is kind of expected because I don't think the original version offered that. It doesn't seem like they were going super intense in depth in regards to like upgrading some stuff. Again, what I was mentioning, where it wouldn't have hurt to change some things, and I think maybe some split screen would have been nice. I think that could have been a good idea. But yeah, this is just like a meaty game. It's something that you play a ton of. And I think it's kind of epic too, the different places you go, the creatures you fight, the monsters you tackle. They do a miraculous job of the game is 15 plus hours. We worked through it in 15, but we were grinding pretty hard to get through it. But you know what I mean, like a game that takes that long and it doesn't feel as if, it feels fresh the whole time. It really does feel distinctly fresh every time you work through it. And I find that just to be absolutely so shocking that they were able to provide something this expansive back in the day when this released, right? Because we're looking at it from the perspective of, they've cleaned things up, but at the base, it's still that core game that maybe a lot of people fell in love with so many years ago. And you could see why it's largely considered one of the best games of all time. And it's fantastic. It is peak dungeon crawling. It is just intense. And it's just been upgraded and cleaned up so well. It feels fantastic. I like the style of it. And I'm kind of almost intrigued, hopefully time-wise, that I can sit here and maybe do some other things with it in the future, because I think that would be, really a lot of fun, really quite fulfilling to see what else I could, kind of experience throughout this one. Ooh, a superior crystal sword with sockets. Ooh, ho, ho, ho. But yeah, there's all these dimensions too. How you set up your classes, how you prepare your characters, the enemies you fight, the things you do, the way you interact with enemies. I think that's kind of cool. And then they're going to have these more intense things over time too. They're going to have these ladders for competition. Right now you can do it competitively, or you can play casually. So there's different, directions you can take depending on your interests within the Diablo universe and what you want to do. And I think that's just to me really quite fantastic that you can make these choices and be like, oh, I want to do it more competitively, or hey, I want to do it more casually, and those choices are definitely up to you, and I think that's very well done. It is a well put together package. I didn't really have any issues with it. I think it played quite well. I had a lot of fun working through this, especially in co-op and experiencing it with someone else. I was like, this is this is such a unique game. It really is something that is so different and crazy and wild, and wow, there's a lot of enemies here. This is kind of nuts. Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting that, that's for sure. And then, there's elements of, I use health, but there's also, like, mana, and it depends on your classes and what you're going to do and your builds and everything like that, what you set up. Like, there's so many, like, meta points to this game that I find absolutely fantastically unique and exciting to kind of dive into. I'm almost like a complete casual of this game compared to some of the things that other people have set up, some of the things I've heard about what you can do with your, like, dynamic setups and what you can kind of battle and how you can enjoy things. I think it's kind of crazy. And like I said, like, this is basically, like, me scratching the surface of the game, because you can go back so many times with it and continue to be, like, surprised. I think that is quite rewarding, that it is something where it's like, I can play this over and over and over again, and it's going to feel kind of exciting. It's going to feel fresh. It's going to be like, oh wow, what else is there to discover? Should we go off to a new place? Should we tackle a new dungeon this time? What should we do? And I think that's kind of cool. And it can get pretty meaty. Oh, and they're, like, meaty in terms of, like, just the quantity of enemies on the screen at once. It can be absolutely insane. Like, there's so many that you can fight at once, and I think that's wild. And also, like, the original quality of this game is really worthwhile to go back to occasionally, because I think it looks fantastic. Like, I kind of want that flawed sapphire. It's just like, it's got such a classic sort of look to it, and the animations are so well done, and all the different weapons and all the different characters. Like, you could see why it was so well loved back in the day. And I really have, like, a new level of appreciation for this particular game now that I've actually been able to sit here, work through it, see what it has to offer, play it, battle, take on hordes. And I'm not even, like, technically, if I wanted to, I could go on insanely longer. I'm just, like, scratching the surface. I'm just, like, basically getting started. And that's kind of scary to think about, but at the same time, if you're someone that, like, loves the core gameplay loop of dungeon crawling, you can waste, like, probably hundreds of hours of your life just battling away here, and you can have a great time with it. And I think that's the hallmark of a very good experience. I think that's something that makes it exciting and dynamic and cool. Like, really, it's just a really cool sort of experience. Let's get back here. And I think we wanted to sell this to, like, one of these guys. So many different dynamics of the different people you gotta deal with. Hello, Vera. How are you doing today? And then you can, like, mutate stuff or, like, transmute stuff, and, you gotta buy different potions. Oh, I thought did you sell scrolls too? I don't know. Anyways, very, very well done. Very cool. I had a lot of fun. I guess I'll continue talking on a bit more about it, but that's really what I have to say. I like it. It's exciting. It looks cool. It's gory and intense, and, the dungeons are crazy, and the places you go is just, like, there's so many exciting spots. And I wish that it didn't take so much gold when you die. This game is, like, savage for gold. And I know if you put stuff in your stash, it takes less gold, but it still takes, like, a ton of gold when you die. And as someone that's, like, tanking for others, it's just, like, I die a lot, and it's just, like, it's kind of hard to get ahead gold-wise, if you know what I mean. Like, it can really wear down on your gold stuff. I don't know if maybe we want to show off a bit of the City of the Damned. That might be cool. Yeah, such a distinct variety of locations that you can visit. The River of the Flame. Oh yeah, this place is pretty awesome. Yeah, it's I've had so many memorable moments in this game already. And hopefully there'll be more too. Because like I said, you could rerun it on higher difficulties, get better loot, continue to play over and over again. And it's just something that, like, demands your attention in your battles. And good luck out there in the lands of Diablo. I think for the most part, you'll find it to be worthwhile. You'll find it to be cool. And then, of course, the gem of switching from then and now is such a neat effect to have, and I really hope that further remakes of games in the future continue to support that, because it is insanely awesome to see the difference in technology over the years. To me, that is so memorable.